I settled into my first-class window seat on Flight 724 from Miami to Seattle, my noise-canceling headphones already out, and my tablet loaded with work documents. The 7-hour flight would give me time to finalize the acquisition proposal I'd been working on for weeks. My company was in the process of purchasing a regional airline, ironically enough, and I needed every minute of this flight to prepare for Monday's board meeting. I'd paid for the first-class ticket specifically for the extra space and quiet I needed to concentrate. That's when I first heard her voice. "This is my seat. I specifically requested a window seat when I booked. This is unacceptable." I glanced up to see a woman in her mid-50s with an aggressively styled blonde bob, wearing what appeared to be a velour tracksuit despite the Miami heat, standing in the aisle beside my row. She was pointing at my seat 2A, while holding a boarding pass in her other hand. The flight attendant, whose name tag read Jessica, was trying to maintain her professional smile. "Ma'am, your boarding pass shows you're in seat 5B, which is an aisle seat. This gentleman is in the correct seat according to his boarding pass." The woman, who I would soon learn was named Karen Mitchell, turned her attention directly to me. I need you to move. I have a medical condition that requires me to sit by the window. You look young and healthy. You can sit anywhere." I pulled out one earbud politely. "I'm sorry, but I specifically booked this window seat. I have work I need to do during the flight, and I chose this seat for that reason." Make sure to hit that like button if you're enjoying this story of entitled airplane behavior, and subscribe to Karen Eat World for more unbelievable tales of Karens getting what they deserve. Trust me, you won't want to miss where this is going. Karen's face began to turn an alarming shade of red. "I don't think you understand. I need this seat. I get claustrophobic in the middle seats, and the aisle seat has too much traffic. I'm a platinum frequent flyer with this airline. Do you know what that means?" Jessica, the flight attendant, interjected again, her professional composure showing slight cracks. "Ma'am, if you'd like to discuss seat options, I can check if there are any other window seats available in first class, but this gentleman has the right to remain in his assigned seat. I don't want another window seat. I want this window seat. It's the emergency exit row. It has more legroom." Karen's voice was rising now, drawing attention from other passengers who were still boarding and trying to get past her into their own seats. I felt my jaw tighten but kept my voice level. "This isn't actually an emergency exit row. That's row 12 in economy. This is just a regular first-class window seat. And as the flight attendant explained, this is my assigned seat. I'm not moving." What I didn't mention to Karen was that I'd actually paid extra to select this specific seat because it was the furthest from the galley and the lavatories. I'd flown this route dozens of times for business, and I knew exactly which seat would give me the peace and quiet I needed. My company's acquisition of Summit Regional Airlines was a $40 million deal, and I hadn't gotten to the position of Vice President of Corporate Development by giving up what I'd paid for. Karen's eyes narrowed. "You're being completely unreasonable. I'm going to report you to the airline. You're discriminating against me because of my medical condition." "Ma'am, there's no discrimination here," Jessica tried again. "Sir, would you be willing to switch seats as a courtesy?" I looked Jessica in the eye. "I paid $350 extra for this specific seat because I need it for work purposes. I'm not switching. I'm sorry about her situation, but that's not my problem to solve." This was apparently the wrong thing to say. Karen's volume increased to what could only be described as a shriek. "Not your problem? How dare you? I have severe anxiety and claustrophobia. This is a medical emergency. You're going to be responsible if something happens to me during this flight." The flight attendant excused herself, and I could see her walking quickly toward the front of the plane, undoubtedly to get a supervisor or the lead flight attendant. Other first-class passengers were now openly staring, some recording on their phones. A man across the aisle caught my eye and gave me a sympathetic shrug. Karen decided to take matters into her own hands. She literally tried to shove her carry-on bag into the overhead bin above my seat, banging it against the compartment so aggressively that the whole thing shook. Then she attempted to sit down in the middle seat next to me, seat 2B, which was currently empty. "If you won't move, then I'll just sit here and make your flight miserable," she announced, plopping down with enough force to make both seats shake. I pulled my tablet closer to my chest protectively. "Ma'am, that's not your assigned seat either. You need to go to 5B, your actual seat." "Make me," she said, crossing her arms like a defiant toddler. At this point, Jessica returned with an older flight attendant who had "Lead Flight Attendant" on her name tag under the name Patricia. Patricia had the look of someone who had dealt with difficult passengers for 20+ years and had exactly zero patience left for nonsense. "Ma'am, I'm going to need you to take your assigned seat, which is 5B, or we're going to have to ask you to deplane," Patricia said in a voice that was professional but had an edge of steel to it. Karen stood up abruptly. "You can't kick me off this plane. I haven't done anything wrong. This man is harassing me. He's making me feel unsafe." I blinked in disbelief. I hadn't moved from my seat, hadn't raised my voice, and hadn't made any threatening gestures. I'd simply refused to give up the seat I'd paid for and been assigned. "Ma'am, multiple passengers and crew members have witnessed this interaction. You're the one who needs to take your assigned seat, or yes, we absolutely can and will remove you from this aircraft," Patricia stated firmly. Several other passengers who had been waiting to get past this spectacle to reach their seats began voicing their agreement. An older gentleman behind Karen spoke up. "Miss, I saw the whole thing. This young man hasn't done anything wrong. You're holding up the whole plane." This only enraged Karen further. "Oh, so now you're all ganging up on me? This is discrimination. This is a hate crime. I'm being victimized because I'm a woman traveling alone." Patricia held up her hand. "Ma'am, this is your final warning. Sit in your assigned seat 5B right now, or you will be removed from this aircraft." Karen looked around wildly, seeming to realize that the situation wasn't going her way. Then, in what I can only assume was a last-ditch effort to get her way, she did something I still can't quite believe. She grabbed my tablet right out of my hands. "If he won't move, then I'm confiscating his electronics. He's probably got illegal materials on here anyway. I'm performing a citizen's arrest." Time seemed to slow down. I stood up immediately. "Give that back. Now. That contains proprietary company information." Jessica and Patricia both moved toward Karen, but she held the tablet above her head like a child playing keep away. "Not until he moves to a different seat. This is leverage. This is negotiation." That's when I saw him. A man in plain clothes who had been sitting quietly in first class stood up, and I noticed the badge on his belt. Federal Air Marshal. "Ma'am, return that tablet to its owner immediately." Karen's face went pale, then red, then pale again in rapid succession. This isn't fair." The Air Marshal, whose name I later learned was Agent Rodriguez, was not interested in Karen's explanation. "You just committed theft of property and disrupted a flight crew in the performance of their duties. Return the tablet now." Karen, perhaps finally realizing the gravity of her situation, lowered the tablet. But instead of handing it back to me, she threw it. She actually threw my tablet down the aisle of the plane, where it clattered against the floor and skidded into the galley area. The entire first-class cabin gasped. Agent Rodriguez's expression hardened. "Ma'am, turn around and put your hands behind your back. You're under arrest for interference with a flight crew, theft, and destruction of property." "What? No. I'm the victim here." Karen's voice reached a pitch I didn't think was humanly possible. "He started it. He wouldn't give me his seat." She actually tried to run. In an airplane. While it was boarding. There was literally nowhere to go. She made it about 3 rows back into first class before Agent Rodriguez caught her, along with another air marshal who had apparently been seated in the business class section. What followed was perhaps the most dramatic scene I've ever witnessed on an aircraft. Karen began screaming at the top of her lungs about police brutality, discrimination, her rights as an American citizen, her status as a platinum frequent flyer, and how her lawyer was going to sue everyone involved. She went completely limp, forcing the air marshals to drag her toward the exit. "I have a medical condition," she shrieked as they hauled her past my row. "This is assault. Someone call 911. I'm being kidnapped." "Ma'am, we are law enforcement," Agent Rodriguez said wearily. "You can call a lawyer once we're off this plane." As they dragged her past, Karen locked eyes with me. "This is all your fault. I hope you're happy. You've ruined my life over a seat." "A seat?" I simply stared back at her calmly. "I hope the view from county jail is better than the view from 5B would have been." I probably shouldn't have said that, but the stress of the situation had gotten to me. Karen let out an incoherent scream of rage and actually tried to lunge at me, but the air marshals had a firm grip on her. They continued dragging her toward the exit, her screaming echoing through the cabin the entire way. The entire plane was dead silent except for Karen's distant shrieking from the jet bridge. Patricia, the lead flight attendant, approached me with my tablet, which Jessica had retrieved from the galley. "Sir, I am so incredibly sorry about what just happened. Are you all right?" I checked my tablet. The screen had a small crack in the corner, but it still powered on. All my files appeared intact, thank goodness for cloud backup. "I'm fine, just a little shaken up." "Is this normal?" Patricia laughed, but it was a tired laugh. "In 23 years of flying, I've seen a lot, but that was definitely in the top 10 worst passenger incidents. We're going to need you to file a report, and the airline will absolutely cover any damage to your device." Over the next 20 minutes, while the plane finished boarding and the gate agents dealt with the police arriving to officially take Karen into custody, I learned more about what had happened. Apparently, Karen had been upgraded to first class as a platinum member but had been assigned the last available seat, which happened to be 5B, the aisle seat. She had tried to get the gate agent to change her seat assignment before boarding, but all other first-class seats were occupied. She'd been told she could either take 5B or return to her original economy seat. Karen, it seemed, had boarded the plane already furious and had decided that she would simply bully someone out of their seat. She'd chosen me because, as she'd said, I looked young and like I could sit anywhere. What she didn't know was that I was on my way to finalize a deal that would make me one of the youngest vice presidents in my company's history, and I definitely wasn't going to let anyone push me around. One of the other first-class passengers, an older woman in seat 3A, leaned over. "Good for you for standing your ground, dear." That woman was absolutely unhinged. The entitlement of some people never ceases to amaze me. Another passenger, a businessman in seat 4C, added, "I recorded the whole thing on my phone. If you need it for any legal proceedings or insurance claims, I'm happy to send it to you." As the plane finally pushed back from the gate, 45 minutes late, Patricia made an announcement. "Ladies and gentlemen, we apologize for the delay this evening. As you may have witnessed, we had to remove a disruptive passenger from the aircraft. We appreciate your patience and understanding. Flight time to Seattle will be 6 hours and 52 minutes. A few passengers actually applauded, whether for the removal of Karen or just the fact that we were finally taking off, I wasn't sure. As we reached cruising altitude, Jessica came by with a drink service. "Anything you'd like is complimentary for you today, sir. Courtesy of the captain and the airline." I ordered a whiskey neat. I felt like I'd earned it. As I sipped my drink and finally opened my work documents, I couldn't help but reflect on what had just happened. Karen had been so convinced that her status, her medical claims, and her sheer volume would get her what she wanted. She'd escalated from rude to aggressive to criminal in the span of about 15 minutes, all because she couldn't accept a simple no. The flight was smooth after that, and I managed to get most of my work done. When we landed in Seattle, Patricia found me as I was deplaning. "Sir, we have your contact information from your frequent flyer account, but here's my card as well. The airline will be in touch regarding the incident, and we'll make sure your tablet repair is covered. Also, and this is unofficial, but you handled that with remarkable calm." Most people would have been screaming right back at her. I thanked her and made my way through the airport. My phone had about 30 text messages, mostly from colleagues who had apparently seen videos of the incident that other passengers had already posted online. The hashtag #SeatStealerKaren was apparently trending on social media. But the story doesn't end there. 2 weeks later, I received a certified letter at my office. It was from Karen Mitchell's attorney, informing me that she was suing me for emotional distress, defamation, and violating her civil rights. The letter claimed that I had provoked her into her behavior and that my inflammatory comments had caused her to suffer severe psychological trauma. She was seeking $250,000 in damages. I read the letter twice, then called my company's legal department. They assured me that the lawsuit was frivolous and that they would handle it, as the incident had occurred while I was on company business. They also mentioned that the airline had provided them with all the video footage from the aircraft cameras, statements from crew members and passengers, and the Air Marshal's official report. Karen, it turned out, had been charged with multiple federal offenses: interference with the flight crew, theft, destruction of property, and assaulting a federal officer. Apparently she'd kicked Agent Rodriguez during the removal process. She was facing up to 20 years in prison if convicted on all counts, though her lawyer was trying to negotiate a plea deal. But here's where the story gets interesting. Remember how I mentioned I was working on an acquisition deal? Well, Summit Regional Airlines, the company we were purchasing, had a code-share agreement with the major carrier that operated Flight 724. As part of my due diligence for the acquisition, I had access to all passenger records, complaint histories, and ban lists across both airlines. Guess whose name appeared on the frequent flyer account with a history of 17 formal complaints in the past 2 years, including 3 incidents of verbally abusing flight attendants, 2 claims of other passengers stealing her upgrades, and 1 previous threat to sue the airline? Karen Mitchell wasn't just an entitled passenger having a bad day. She was a serial problem passenger who had been abusing her platinum status to terrorize airline employees and other travelers for years. The airline had flagged her account multiple times but had never banned her because she flew frequently for her job as a pharmaceutical sales representative, and her company bought thousands of tickets per year. As the VP of Corporate Development handling this acquisition, I had a unique position. I was part of the team that would be implementing new policies and procedures across both airlines once the merger was complete. And one of the policies I championed, and which the board enthusiastically approved, was a unified ban list that would be shared across all partner and subsidiary airlines. The policy was simple: any passenger who had been arrested for interfering with a flight crew or assaulting airline personnel would be permanently banned from flying on any aircraft operated by or partnered with our airline group. This would include not just the major carrier and Summit Regional, but also 6 other regional partners and code-share international airlines. Essentially, we were creating one of the largest airline ban networks in North America. Karen Mitchell was passenger number 1 on that list. But I wasn't done. As part of the merger, I also worked with our legal team to file countersuits against passengers who had pending frivolous lawsuits against our airlines. Karen's lawsuit against me personally had named the airline as well, claiming they had created an unsafe environment by not immediately giving her the seat she wanted. We countersued for the cost of the flight delay, the damaged tablet, the Air Marshal's time, and the legal fees associated with defending against her frivolous suit. The total came to just over $75,000. Her employer, upon learning of her arrest and the subsequent publicity, those videos had millions of views, fired her. Without her job, she could no longer maintain her platinum status anyway. The criminal charges were eventually pleaded down to a single federal misdemeanor with probation and a fine, but the civil countersuit proceeded. Karen's lawyer tried to argue that she had been having a medical emergency related to her anxiety, but the prosecution produced evidence of her 17 previous complaints, showing a pattern of entitled behavior rather than a one-time medical crisis. 6 months after the incident, I received a notification from our legal department. Karen had agreed to drop her lawsuit against me and the airline in exchange for us dropping the countersuit. However, the permanent ban from our airline network remained in place. Her attorney had tried to negotiate its removal, but I had personally ensured that the ban policy had no exception clause for legal settlements. The final twist came a year later. Karen's ex-husband, from whom she'd been divorced for 3 years, contacted me through LinkedIn. He'd seen the news coverage of the incident and wanted to thank me. Apparently, Karen's entitled behavior and constant confrontations had been a major factor in their divorce. He'd been paying her alimony, but her arrest and the publicity from the incident had finally given him the ammunition he needed to go back to court. The judge, upon seeing evidence of Karen's pattern of behavior and her criminal conviction, had ruled that she had failed to make reasonable efforts to maintain employment, getting fired for being arrested while traveling for work, and had reduced his alimony obligation by 70%. I never responded to his message. It felt too much like piling on. But I did keep the email in a folder, just as a reminder of how a 15-minute confrontation over an airplane seat had turned into a life-altering series of consequences for someone who simply couldn't accept being told no. The cracked corner of my tablet, which I never bothered to repair, served as a permanent reminder of the day I met Karen Mitchell. Every time I flew in Seat 2A on that route, which I continued to book specifically, I thought about how different things might have been if she had just accepted her assigned seat and enjoyed her complimentary first-class upgrade. 3 years after the incident, I was promoted to Senior Vice President of Operations for our entire airline group. One of my responsibilities was reviewing ban list appeals. Every year, like clockwork, Karen Mitchell's attorney would submit an appeal to have her removed from the ban list. And every year, like clockwork, I would review her file, see the 17 complaints, the arrest record, the videos of her being dragged off the plane, and I would stamp the appeal denied. The ban policy I'd helped create had gone on to remove over 250 problematic passengers from our airline network, making flights safer and more pleasant for crew members and passengers alike. It had been featured in industry publications as a model policy, and several other airline groups had adopted similar measures. All because Karen Mitchell couldn't accept sitting in seat 5B. If you've enjoyed this story of epic airplane karma, smash that like button and subscribe to Karen Eat World. We've got tons more stories of entitled Karens getting exactly what they deserve, and you won't want to miss a single one. Hit that notification bell so you never miss an upload, retry.